what do, should, or could dance literate people contribute to this world? And how do we, in ways, almost get out of theatres, get out of the studio, and be the, let's say, fully formed human beings that we are, and the capacities that we have? And so some of the stuff I want to touch on is to do with that kind of thinking. And although I've given myself this wonderful title of artistic citizenship, that's a really kind of quite contested term at the moment. And I know that I haven't gone into depth in critically analysing that for today. So I'm hopefully going to unfold a little bit of what it might mean or how we might use it into the future. So my title is an ambition for our practice, an ambition with respect to valuing understanding of our moving together, of our dancing and dance making as enabling artistic citizenship, something I see as a vital framework in terms of the way that we can live socially in integrating societies. Something goes on in dance that reveals itself to be a rich identifier of a lively way of being and of living. For me, our work is an investigation, an articulate revelation of creative investigatory ventures into knowing and into being human while we have the planet. It's about ourselves, it's about our potential identities, it's about communicating, interacting through varied cooperations, collaborations, transmissions of energy and knowledges together, reception and allowances for our difference. So it's about being with others, embracing and working through challenges that broaden our appreciation of being in this world. Got a double hit on this, so just going past there. So Elizabeth Gross captures this succinctly, talking about experiences of art, saying that art is the most direct intensification of the resonance and dissonance between bodies and the cosmos, between one milieu or rhythm or another. I know the room to be full of people who might think in the same or in similar ways. It's the most direct. It's bodily felt, it's bodily known, it's bodily shared. So experienced dancing can offer pathways to understanding complex contexts and circumstances of our lives, because when people dance, they have opportunity to explore multiple associations, to make their individuality possible and cultivate appreciation for the ways we may each interconnect, extending our thinking and leading us to explore new and often uncharted territory. Dance making in these ways is an animating ethic, aesthetic, and social practice. So how do we disseminate this further and secure the place of such knowledge within education? How do we take this outside of our knowing spaces as dance professionals and practitioners? So I'm interested, as I said before, in gathering responses and questions and thinking about what can this Dance HE community do to further and to change and to challenge the institutionalization of our disciplines and the diminishing, if you like, of our social structures. So during dance dialogues at Trinity Laban, we talked about TEF, we talked about REF, expectations of our students, career progression, program security, contractual changes, dealing with an education system that is employability driven, with the reintroduction of old tropes concerning preparation for a workplace or preparation for industry, as opposed to a preparation for life. So today it would be good to continue to add to this collage of terms, of ideas, of furthering and extending the debate and filling in these blanks about our thoughts moving forward. So in order to do some of that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about ideas which have been coming up through discussions with Dance HE. So our cohorts generally have a high number of women. An increasing number of women identify with mental health issues. 1 in 4, aged 19 to 21, have mental problems identified, mental health problems identified. Our cohorts are primarily made of women aged 18 to 21. So as classes grow and requirement of attention expands and it becomes more problematic, how do we accommodate the need for all within our work? Are we given opportunities for enhanced training or enhanced support networks in order to secure yourself and your students? In module delivery, thinking of your own work, in what ways are module evaluations reshaping what you teach? Is your experience of learning being driven by what's acceptable or what's most popular? What ways do you have to question the context and outcomes of module reviews in terms of the challenges that you have planned and designed for your learners? So in hitting the ground running, Dance HE at the moment, again working back from the information we shared at the AGM, are developing projects. We're redeveloping our website. We're trying to think what resources can we start to, I suppose, ask our colleagues to generate or already have that we can actually make more public. So one of the things we're trying to think about is toolkits, the need to know for HE. So people who are getting short-term contracts, who are having to hit the ground running when they enter a department. How can we help them? What are the frequently asked questions that we could offer responses for? How do you unpick the QAA documentation for somebody who's just entering the space in the studio for a 6-week intensive delivery? How do we help freelancers negotiate contracts with the institution so that the work they do and the hours that they cover are actually paid rather than offered in kind and hidden and disguised? So what we want to do is to share tales of experiencing being a visiting lecturer with supporting routes and building of networks, very similar to what you were saying already this morning. One of the things we did as a project a few years ago now was a mentor-mentee scheme. So how can we broaden that out so there can be mentors who are in different institutions, who are away from your team, who aren't within your management structures, so that that space of being able to talk, to be able to let off steam, to be able to hear things in different ways could be offered to all of us within our work. So commitment to students has not changed, but I wonder about the health and stamina of colleagues. The fortunes of this discipline moving forward need our attention. So it brings me back to my key concern of citizenship. So with experiences dancing extending beyond any making of an artwork and into our immediate psychosocial physical environment, arguably we effectively anticipate a place where the actual work of social change is bound up in how we create, who creates, and when we create art. This I understand as a shaping of aesthetic experience, acknowledging art making, sharing, taking, and experiencing as richly personal, corporeal, cognitive, emotional, and social. We work in a complex disciplinary area, concerned with a host of personal narratives and identities, of vulnerabilities, exposures, ecstatic images, and life-changing possibilities. In thinking about today, I went to the web to explore our title and found attempts to bridge multiple gaps between the perception of dance as a discipline and the wealth and knowledge that it embraces. It seems to me, I was saying yesterday evening, there seems to be a trend in gaps. So we have gaps between dance student and, I find, the grooming for a professional career. We have gaps between varied training regimes and fusions. We have gaps between stylistic emphasis and differences. We have gaps between foundation courses and preparation for degree programs. We have gaps between community interaction and the application of practice. We have gaps between competitive dance into what some people call HE dance. It's a whole company of itself. We have gaps between graduation through to professional development with companies. We have gaps between university dance departments and education projects in schools, in youth centres, in day centres. We have gaps in terms of access to study programs. And we have gaps between cultures in research with notions of value and impact. So gaps in lots of ways are what we kind of deal with, I suppose. The contradictions, the pull of direction, the demands placed upon all in what we do. So what kind of curriculum activists might we need to become in order to argue the case that bodily knowledge is significant and that we ignore it at our peril? Big questions, I know. Our work unmistakably involves contributing to identity making. None of this happens without change, and with change there are challenges. Through the process of making dance, of dance sharing, and of dancing, what becomes apparent are the interconnecting patterns and systems that contribute to the ways we think, we learn, and we interrelate. These attributes are not easily quantifiable and increasingly undervalued. They do not fit easily into a model of measurement. We become a troublesome discipline filled with committed people who are trouble because of their very conviction. We have principals and VCs with increased salaries that sweeten the ease with which education can be changed to a marketplace. We are immersed again in the political project of education. Arts education is diminished with respect to social, moral, or artistic value, and we observe the promotion of the easier principles in terms of regulation and control and competition. Of course, the art education we work in presents the moving body right up front, and this is an issue for our culture and for the academy. For John Dewey, it is experiences gained working in the arts that provides routes to most effective means of communicating ideas. And I go back to John Dewey's work again and again and again, and many, many people who write in a similar vein to him. So I'm going back to a last century, and he was going back to centuries and centuries before. So that space of John Dewey's work, I would encourage anybody to read Art and Experience. He aligns engagement with practices of art as enhancing access to difference and facilitating and enriching the possibilities of future thinking. Arguably, it is a communality made available through shared working in dance that offers routes to an expansion of experience, challenging people to think more critically and self-reflectively about themselves, their lives, their attitudes, whilst opening new alternatives and the possibilities for consideration. Dewey favours such approach for the role they have in facilitating communication as the basis of democratic practice. He argues that, I hope, art is a mode of prediction not found in charts and statistics. It insinuates possibilities of human relations not found in rules, domination, and administration. I know it is evident to us that physicality plays an important role in facilitating our sociality and our individual agency. However, it is woefully ignored in our cultural experience and increasingly diminished throughout our education. Recognizing that in moving we think shouldn't be a specialism of elite performance. It should be considered a human right in terms of learning what it is to be embodied and in relation with other bodies. Now, as a branded discipline, we are assumed from an outside perspective to be the same, to be collective in our endeavours, but we are not. We have differing understandings, experiences and belief systems that sometimes coalesce, but often do not. We can feel a sense of assumed hierarchies in terms of stylistic difference or in the use of choreographic constructs. We continue to experience imbalance in the terms of roles and the wage and the accolades given to some within our discipline. We continue to marvel at the social art form tethered to a history that speaks of a choreographic voice. We see the rise of copyright contracts protecting supposed ownership of body design, of creative ideas, of speech acts, language and curricula. Knowledge of bodily communication is an expanding business and a branding of bodily articulation. But if we consider creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, physical acumen, improvisation, evaluation, assimilation as integral features of a curriculum, maybe we would do well to talk of the future of dance in the language faculty, an education in communication, embodied practitioners, embodied people. We have to do more than continue to drive home earlier experimental approaches for codified moving. Instead, identity that is moving, relating, forming to think, we are practicing 21st century competencies of knowing and of doing. We have to address what goes on in coming to know ourselves as alert, alive, three-dimensional persons engaged in ever increasingly complex culture, politics, and digital existences. In putting dance to work, we can generate interwoven human values. Fundamentally, dance is as social communication, as active social engagement, as the development of proficiencies or skills, an enhancing facility of well-madeness, of understanding self, with respect to judgment and the manner of communicating. I talk more often these days of identity making in dance and think of potential experiences of learning to learn being offered in the work that we do through bodily interaction and the resultant embodied knowledge. It is these relationships between what is embodied, felt, thought and shared that arguably identify dance as a self-actualizing discipline. In this applied, participatory, socially informed practice, artistry, skill and creative ambition are at the core, alongside critical thinking and political awareness. And here we make special with reference to our citizenship as a fluid intertwining of our public, private, creative and critical selves. We need to publish in human geography, psychology, business management journals, present at conferences about systems analysis and cultural policy. Our colleagues talk about bodily awareness and social awareness, of spatial coordinates, of new intelligences, in great claims for groundbreaking research. We are the experts in much of this work. What goes on in dance is a well-kept secret, and we need to spread that. In valuing the nature of dance, we can recognize knowledge as sensory, muscular, and relatable. This discipline is rich in 21st century competencies to think, to be, to know, and to do. We have to learn to talk to a host of people perplexed at the very idea that physical knowledge exists, or that physical knowledge should even be within the academy. So I have an invitation to offer you as we begin our day, by way of questions. I know there's been lots of questions already. As a discipline community, in what new ways can we promote and disseminate work and research that embraces and reveals artistic citizenship experienced in and through dance? That speaks of societal and cultural values, of moving to learn, that shapes thinking in the broadest personal sense of our shared world. In the process, we need to champion the notion that we exist and think through bodily interaction and embodied knowledge. We need to leave the battles of previous generations in terms of choreography and techniques and associate with the 21st century chaosmos that we now exist within. We know we are seeing the increase in strategic learning because young people are taught to the test. They learn to target, plan and purchase discrete pockets of information with little, if any, time for synthesis or critical engagement. There are merits in developing an aptitude to operate with speed and dexterity in the delivery of tasks. Many facets of traditions of dance could arguably be understood in such strategic terms. Think of the people that you know or you might be who can see a phrase within a studio and reproduce it. So I have to ask, how do we deal with apparent contradictions of preserving and supporting the development of individuals exposed to an educational system that serves more readily economic and political masters, rather than the social, cultural, and ultimately ethical questions of their futures? The answer must include evolving, progressive, cohesive education frameworks with time to develop critically reflective habits of mind, facilitating intellectual emancipation in this way. And do we recognize this to be the dance that we are delivering? In further nuance, Sigismund talks of the arts are not simply about the mastery of technical skills, but that technical skills we might strive for can offer gateways or portals into non-linguistic thinking. These places of encounter with learning and knowing are where our critical engagement is contributory to our artistic citizenship. It is here that experiences dancing teach us of focused perception, imagination and narration, of sense-making, originality, identity forming, questioning and experimenting with the rules rather than accepting them in an unquestioning acquiescence to social society. My experience of dance as a student and as a teacher is one of learning how to meet important challenges in this complex world, a behaviour learned through engaging with the challenges of learning how to express myself, alone and with others. We are in the business of supporting individuals to become through their doing. And just a last thing from Julia Roundtree. This is a very interesting book, Playing for Time, Making Art as if the World Mattered. And she says, art making brings rigour to which people bring uncertainty, terror, joy, hope, beauty, and themselves. The opportunity to imagine a different future will be tangible as global thinking can be grounded in local realities and inventive ways of seeing and doing are discovered. If we can create this, people think, we can do anything.